This is the Week 1 Bills versus Cardinals preview show. I'm your host, Alex. Please like, share, and subscribe. We're going to go over the key matchups today in the Bills versus Cardinals game at 1 p.m. on Sunday. We're also going to review the potential weather issues and also any kind of injury concerns that may have popped up during the week or previous ones that are kind of lingering at this point. I also worked up some PFF grades to going to give you a good gauge of how the player performed last year potentially, and maybe where some soft spots are on the Cardinals that we can maybe exploit a little bit. But I don't subscribe to PFF, so just keep that in mind. I use the free overall score that they have online. And I'm not getting like the offense versus defense score, the run score versus the pass score. Like they have scores for almost everything. This is just a compilation score from last year. So I try to keep it as brief and easy to read as possible. I thought about doing the last 2 or 3 years, and I just thought that was overkill. So I'll get right into it. So just to start with the Cardinals offense, their PFF breakdown goes as follows. Kyler Murray's a 70.8. And now I'll explain to you too the scores for this. PFF isn't an end all to be all, by the way, either. It's more of just a tool. It's a really good source for using objective data and applying it in subjective terms to make a score for each individual player, team, units, things of that nature. So these aren't the end all to be all. Kyler Murray at a 70.8, that's low end starter tier. But that doesn't mean that that's the way he played last year, right? So I didn't think he played up to a 70.8 last year personally, but that's where the score model worked out. So that's kind of the things to keep in mind here. But I think it gives you a good overall gauge of where we are. I think it's one of the only sources that can provide this type of information for us that doesn't have a paywall all the way through it. There is a paywall, but not in the front end. So 70.8 for him, solid. James Conner was great last year when he played. He's getting a little bit older too. I'm not sure how he'll continue to run the ball, but he was really, really good last year when he did play. Marvin Harrison Jr. doesn't have a score because he's a rookie. We have Michael Wilson at 68.3. Greg Dortch, who's kind of a training camp darling for them, is a 68.2. But I will say with Dortch, he's never really done much. So when I saw them talking about him in training camp, it didn't really resonate with me because I know what he is. He's like Isaiah McKenzie used to be like that for Buffalo, where he was great in training camp, great in practice, but his diminutive size and things like that don't always play well in the games. And his quickness plays really well in practice. So that could be what we're seeing there. Trey McBride as well. He's one of the new up and coming he's definitely a top 10 tight end in the league at this point. So we'll see if he can continue that this year. Paris Johnson was only a 60 last year. This is kind of where I think the weaknesses start to expose themselves. I know Paris played on the right side more frequently last season, but this is going to be a new challenge with him having more duties more duties and challenges as it relates to quicker, more dynamic, and higher end pass rushers on the left. So sorry, that came out jumbled, but that's basically what I'm trying to say. So it's going to be a kind of a learning period for him, and I'd love to get him on week 1 because I think he has a lot of talent. So Jonah Williams is the other tackle, right tackle. He's a 58.5 last year. He's pretty much been in that range his whole career. This is not like a test, by the way, 58.5. 58.5 is like a high-end backup score, and Johnson is kind of like it continues into the 60s a little bit of being high-end backup from what I read online. So these are backup tier numbers that we're seeing from these guys as it relates to how they protect the passer and block for the run. So Evan Brown at guard, 55.5, even worse. Will Hernandez has been a disappointment pretty much his whole career. He's serviceable, but that's about it, 66.2. And then Hajalti Froholt, 64.1, a player's name that I'd never seen before. So overall, I think there's a clear weakness here. The middle of that offensive line, I think, is going to be very exposed to players like Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones. And even for that matter, Austin Johnson, Dwayne Carter, I think that's going to be a problem. I also think it's a great game for Greg Rousseau to really challenge the edge and start the season off on a hot note, which is really what we all want to see. And I think that's kind of where he's trending in practice, but let's see it in the games. And if he does a really good job, because Jonah Williams can't handle power that's one of his issues. He's got shorter arms. He's not a big tackle. I think that he's going to have a little bit of an issue with Greg Rousseau. Also, Greg Rousseau, this is the type of player that he dominates. So we'll see. But I think this is an opportunity here to really get a pass rush going in week 1 and really take care of it. On the weaknesses side on this situation, I think that there's an issue with potentially coverage with linebackers, with Dortch and Trey McBride being good outlet players and good like over the middle type of players. Dorian Williams is really, really, really going to have to step up his game this week and at least be serviceable in coverage. I don't think it's going to kill us. I think it's going to be something where they're going to need to really. This is a good learning experience game for him. If he can handle these two, he'll be fine next week in Miami where he plays, because Miami is really great on the outside, on the boundaries mostly, with X and Z receivers, not really in the slot and not really at tight end at all. So this will be a good test for him to kind of get his feet wet. I don't think it's enough to kill us though if he doesn't play well. I think that the guys we have currently are plenty good to pick up the slack, and it won't be enough to like dominate the game and push it in the other direction. Defensively, hold on to make sure I've got this right. Okay, cool. So defensively, we have Zaven Collins, defensive end, 72.1. Dante Stills, 59.3. Bilal Nichols, 51.6. Justin Jones, 49.3. That's like replacement level scores for the two defensive tackles. Their weakness is kind of our strength. They're not, unless Zaven Collins, who is a former linebacker, comes out of nowhere and becomes like an elite edge rusher, what I just don't project that to be the case. They're going to have a really hard time getting to Josh Allen. They're going to really struggle in this situation. Mac Wilson, I believe, came from the Patriots, 81.5 last year, but he had limited playing time. Like we're talking about a fill-in player. So when you see guys like Khalil Shakir for Buffalo, who didn't get a ton of playing time early, his snap counts are much lower than Gabe and Steph. He's also someone that this kind of thing applies to. So if Khalil is going to be good, like it's going to have to translate. Same thing with Mac Wilson. It's a similar kind of situation. Kazir White's a okay player. Like that's a mid-tier backup level score there. And then Dennis Gardecki. Here's the thing though. We may never see Gardeck on the field. Maybe it might be Garrett Williams because they run a lot of nickel as well. So but they do move and shift a whole lot in their defense. So they do a lot of disguise. And I believe Connor McGovern mentioned that in his interview yesterday, saying that they disguise a whole lot. They rotate guys. They push nickels back, bring safeties up, put linebackers out in coverage, bring in a dime backer to fill it. Like there's just a lot of different scenarios that they throw at you. But it looks like and we'll see how it plays, but their defensive coordinator, I believe, comes from the Mike Zimmer tree, which is more of a cover 2 zone kind of situation. And that's going to be great too. So our skill position players are really, really, really suited for that. So Dalton Kincaid and Shakir are awesome against zone. And for that matter, Keon Coleman is actually rated better versus zone at this point in his playing career based on college statistics. So these things could play well for us. Then we have Max Melton. He's a rookie. No scoring there. But that seems great for us. Sean Murphy Bunting, 57.6. Very just a backup player. Buda Baker's great, but he did not have a good year last year, 64.8. One thing I did notice about Buda is his career has kind of gone up and down. So like one year he has 64, next year's like an 80, the next year's a 64 or 65, then he's a 672, and then it's like a 62, and then it's like a 79. So he could be on the uptrend as far as that goes. And then Jalen Thompson, who had a pretty solid year, 71.3 is a solid starting level player score for them. So I think I explained it already, but I think the weaknesses are pretty clear. I think their offensive line is going to have a good day. Not just that, I think we'll be able to run the ball really well, and then we're going to be able to really feast on some of their secondary. Their defense is probably bottom 5 in the league. I know they were rated worst, but we don't know that until it happens. But their talent level is definitely bottom 5. So we should be able to feast on this. It's a good warm-up game before we get into some of the real comp, where we play teams like Miami and New York who have pretty good defensive personnel. This is a good kind of warm up to get our feet under us and get grounded a little bit before the competition ramps up and we can kind of get some of our keys and our plays and things like that in order where we want to be. Notable injury concerns. These actually aren't even people on the injury report itself. Okay, so oops, sorry. The first one is Elijah Jones. He's just not playing. I know he's not playing. So they have a couple questionable guys, but they're not really noteworthy. So these are the ones that matter. Darius Robinson, who's supposed to be an edge starter, he's out, depth tested. BJ Ojolari, same thing, out, depth tested. Elijah Jones, cornerback. They need corners. Depth's going to be tested here. Curtis Samuel, how healthy is he? Is he 100%? My guess would be no. He has a toe, and those things linger. I do wish they held him out an extra week before they put him back on that field, but they have done it. And I've watched some of his highlights from practice that are visible, and they all look to be running at like half speed at best. So it's hard to tell, but he still looks gimpy to me. So we will see. MVS, he's not on the injury report, so he's playing. And I don't think there's an issue. I think it's a neck sprain, kind of was easily, I guess, overcome, so to speak. And then we've got Cole Bishop and Mike Edwards. They're both going to play. They're both 100% full all week. So that's good news. The downside is they're not going to get the snap share they probably originally would have if they practiced all summer. So we're looking at DeMar Hamlin starting, which I don't love, especially when we have a potential wide receiver one for them that could be amazing. That scares me with the coverage over the middle of the field, deep, everything. That all bothers me a lot. Good news is Wilson, who played a pretty good rookie year last year, is not dynamic. He's not going to test anyone deep, really. I'm not worried about him. I'm worried about what if Marvin Harrison Jr. is amazing. That would be my concern. Questions for both teams. Cardinals, we talked about a little bit of this. Depth is definitely one of them. Linebacker, corner, edge, all being tested. And their top ends are not great anyway. So slot cornerback versus Shakir, that should be a field day for him. He should be able to eat in that range. And then linebackers and coverage versus Kincaid. I don't think they can guard Kincaid either. So these are all like super booms for us. Offensive guards, Oliver and Jones. Their offensive guards are going to struggle. We're going to get middle pressure, which is great. So we may not actually see much of a Greg Rousseau breakout. You might see Greg set the edge with AJ on the other side. They're both really good at that, and get the middle pressure, force Murray out, and then have the edges set so you can contain, and then rip off and get a sack or whatever when necessary. That's what my projection is. So if it happens, put in the comments, hey, you were right, because that to me sounds like what's the plan is going to be at this point, because Murray, you don't want to just straight up rush the guy. For us, safety and wide receiver depth, we've been talking about it all summer. It's still a problem. It's less of a problem at safety now, but it's more of the unknown at safety at this point, like who steps up, who really is the starter. I have a hard time believing Hamlin's a starter long term. And then wide receiver depth, how many do they start? Do we activate? Do we activate 4 receivers for this game or all 5? And that's what I really want to know. I have big concerns with us actually just putting 4 out there instead of 5. Now, if we do roster 9 offensive linemen as active for Sunday, we are able to take our numbers up to 48 instead of 46, which bodes well for the receiver room. If we do not, we are pretty thin at guard, just by default, how they orchestrated this roster. Then we may see we run 8, we might only see 46 people and 4 receivers, which I think is just devastating. I think that would be devastating. So not in this game kind of thing, but just a bad look going into it. So hopefully they'll all play. And then, how high is the ceiling for this receiver room, I think, is another one that I didn't put here. And then lastly, Marvin Harrison Jr., is going to be a problem? And I don't know. So we'll see. Well, it's a lot of unknown with that piece, but we're going to win this game. I don't have much reservation about it. I'm nervous about it because it's the first game and we have a new offensive system and new receiver room, but I don't think it's going to be a situation where it's going to matter that much. If we play Miami first or the Jets first or the Chiefs first, I would be really worried right now. So I think it's a good game to ease ourselves into how we want things to look with limited preseason time. And then we can figure it out from there. Like, okay, this works, this doesn't. This is how we're going to orchestrate it. And then lastly, prediction time 31-16. I think Bills win. I think this is going to be a very balanced game for the offense. They're going to rely on short passing a lot. I think they're going to not take many deep shots. There's going to be a lot of over the middle stuff, a lot of Shakir and Kincaid. I do see Allen getting over 250 yards, but I also see us running for 150 in this game because of the weakness on their defensive line and linebacker core. I think that's pretty safe to say that it could be how we orchestrate this game. We can walk into week 2 with maybe the most balanced offensive numbers in the NFL for the week. The one thing I want to look out for is Josh Allen is 16-0 since 2020, which is his breakout year, when he does not throw an interception. Don't throw picks. Just don't do it. I don't care if you throw no touchdowns. Don't throw any interceptions. And we win this game. And I think we win it handily by 2 scores. All right. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in. And I will have a post-game show probably on Monday, though, depending on my schedule after the game on Sunday. So Sunday at 1 p.m. Oh, wait, one more thing. Okay, I'm gonna make it quick. So with the weather. So the weather prediction for Sunday is not much rain at all, if any. But there is a fear that the wind could be pretty gusty. I've seen projections with AccuWeather as high as 38 miles per hour gusts and consistent at 20. I did back check that with weather.com. That theirs is much more modest at 15 to 20 and that's the max. So I tend to follow AccuWeather a little bit closer, but they usually do go a little more negative, a little more aggressive. So probably looking at 30-mile-an-hour gusts on Sunday. Allen can handle that. No rain is what I would project. And the weather being around 60 degrees at kickoff, which is really cold for September football. So that's what it looks like. Sorry I had to backtrack on that, but please like, share, subscribe, and I will see you on Monday or Sunday night.